Lesson 16, Challenges and Risks, Part 1. Welcome to Lesson 16. In this lesson, we'll start to look at some of the common challenges and risks that you could experience while working in a SIAM model. This lesson introduces the topic and then looks at two challenges and their associated risks: building a business case, level of control and ownership. Adopting SIAM requires an organization to change in every area: processes, people, tool sets, suppliers. At Ceylon Ordinax, for example, it could mean recruiting an external service integrator, contracting new service providers, perhaps some staff from IT being transitioned across to service providers. There will be a lot of change. Not every change is successful. You might have some experience yourself of change projects that have failed. Every change comes with challenges, and in this section of the course, we'll study some common SIAM challenges and how they can be overcome. There are 7 challenges that we'll study. They are: building a business case, level of control and ownership, commercial challenges including legacy contracts, cultural fit, collaboration and cooperation, measuring success, trust and eliminating micromanagement, security. For each of these, we'll describe it first, look at who is affected, and at what stage of the SIAM roadmap. We'll then look at the associated risks and how they can be mitigated. If you're doing some extra reading in the SIAM Foundation body of knowledge, you'll notice that there are 9 separate challenges mentioned. The content we'll study is the content required by the course syllabus. Let's start with building the business case. We mentioned earlier in the course that each organization that begins a SIAM transformation will need to have a business case that outlines the expected benefits and any associated costs. Sometimes organizations embark on massive transformation programs because they see a new way of working as fashionable, or because a charismatic new leader pushes them in that direction. A business case makes sure there's a solid business justification for starting any project or change. The business case starts as an outline in the discovery and strategy roadmap stage, with more detail being added in plan and build. It will need to include the business drivers for SIAM from the 5 driver groups. You can see a reminder of the driver groups on screen now. Many organizations believe that SIAM will save them money in the long term. This is often correct, but the cost of the transformation to a SIAM model needs to be factored against this. The main party affected by this challenge is the customer. If the customer can't build a strong business case, the SIAM transformation might never begin. Any organizations that want to sell their services as a service integrator also need to be able to support potential customers in building a strong business case. If they can't persuade potential customers that the service is worth the money, they won't stay in business for long. The roadmap stages that are affected by this challenge are discovery and strategy, and plan and build. The business case needs to be strong enough to convince executives to approve the plan and build stage, and during plan and build to authorize any investment or resources. During implement and run and improve, the service integrator will check against the business case to verify that benefits are being delivered. If the expected benefits haven't been documented clearly in the business case, it will be very difficult to show whether SIAM is delivering what was expected. We're going to study the risks associated with building a business case and their potential mitigation. Click on Risks and Mitigation to learn more. There are 5 risks associated with this challenge. The customer organization might not approve the transition to SIAM because it doesn't understand the potential benefits. The customer organization approves the business case but doesn't allocate enough resources and investment. The customer organization has no clear vision of the expected benefits. The success of the program cannot be measured. The costs are underestimated, possibly leading to a budget shortfall. There are a number of ways to mitigate these risks, to either remove them completely or reduce their impact. Allocating skilled resources to build the business case will be very helpful. This might mean engaging support from a consultancy that has experience in this area. Linking the SIAM strategy to the overall customer strategy and then identifying and addressing each SIAM driver will also contribute to a stronger business case. Adding as much detail as possible and documented expected benefits will also help, as will continual refinement of the business case as the roadmap progresses. Other ways to mitigate the risk of a weak business case include including a proposed SIAM structure and model to help the senior executives understand the planned future state for the organization, identifying any current contracts that are inefficient or wasting money, looking for industry data and benchmarks that can help to show the benefits of SIAM in other similar organizations. For example, Ceylon Ordinax might look for information about other travel firms that have adopted a SIAM model. Can you think of any other ways to mitigate the risks associated with a weak business case? The next challenge we'll study relates to the level of control and ownership in a SIAM model. Adopting SIAM changes the role of the customer. It will hand over operational responsibility to the service integrator and adopt a strategic role. The customer organization needs to balance the benefits it will get from delegating activities against the level of control it is willing to transfer. If the customer can't let go of its operational control, it will not receive any benefit from adopting SIAM. The party mainly affected by this challenge is the customer organization, which will need to make decisions about its preferred SIAM structure and model, what it wants to retain, and what it is prepared to source externally. If the customer doesn't make these decisions and give clear guidance about roles and responsibilities, the service integrator and the service providers might be unclear about what they are meant to be doing. The high-level decisions about the level of control and ownership are made during discovery and strategy, and then more detail is added during plan and build. These decisions must be completed before the service integrator is established, because they define what the service integrator needs to do. We're going to study the risks associated with level of control and ownership and their potential mitigation. Click on Risks and Mitigation to learn more. There are significant risks associated with a lack of clarity about the level of control and ownership. One organization we are aware of decided to source its IT services externally, but couldn't quite let go of control. The result was that they paid for an external organization to have staff on site carrying out activities, but each external staff member was shadowed and observed by a customer organization staff member. This situation meant that no cost savings were realized, the external staff felt uncomfortable, and that they weren't being trusted. And the customer organization staff felt resentful towards the external staff. This situation, where the customer organization shadows external staff, is referred to as man-marking. You can see the risks associated with control and ownership here. They include the service integrator being unable to perform its role because the customer hasn't delegated any tasks. Data is too tightly controlled, so the service integrator and the service providers don't have access to data they need to fulfill their role. Ownership of data isn't defined, so the customer loses control of its data. It's common to think of risks related to control being about too much control, but there are also risks associated with a lack of control. For example, if the customer organization is very happy to delegate everything to the service integrator and relinquishes all involvement in service delivery, the service integrator might find that they don't have enough strategic direction from the customer to be effective. There's a risk associated with too little control of data as well. If the right controls aren't in place, the customer organization is at risk of data breach. So, how can these risks be mitigated? Remember, mitigation means reducing a risk. The cost and effort associated with mitigating a risk needs to be in proportion to the overall seriousness of the risk itself. Firstly, having a clear vision for SIAM will help to reduce this risk. If the customer understands its desired future state, it can work toward that with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. Staff within the customer organization might need training so that they understand the difference between governance and management. Their role will change, and they need to understand where they have a monitor role rather than an active operational role. Other ways to mitigate risks include defining ownership of processes, tools, data, information, and knowledge during the plan and build roadmap stage. If ownership is assigned to the service integrator, the customer knows it doesn't need to carry out that activity anymore and can monitor its staff to ensure they are complying with the new structure. This will be supported by clear policies about data, tooling, and processes. New roles and responsibilities need to be monitored to ensure staff have given up control where appropriate and work isn't being duplicated. The service integrator needs to escalate any issues to the customer organization. Every organization will experience some challenges when it adopts any new way of working. Learning from the experience of other organizations can help to speed up the learning curve that an organization must go through. If you're working in an organization that is new to SIAM, think about ways you can learn more, for example, by networking or talking to other organizations in your industry. Click on the Next button to access your end-of-lesson quiz when you're ready. When you finish the quiz, click the Next button again to move on. You've completed Lesson 16, where we've started to consider the challenges and risks in a SIAM environment. We've studied building a business case, level of control and ownership. In Lesson 17, we'll continue our studies of this topic.